Welcome back to this tutorial on how to implement a basic quest in Divinity Original Sin 2. In this video we're going to talk about character creation. Today is a great day. Larian updated their wiki page with a little more information on how to implement character creation in your standalone adventure, and they included a link to a zipped archive that includes the goal file that we're going to use in our mod in order to implement it. Now, we've been running inside the editor just fine. We get a little dummy character, but what about when we want to really play this in the game? Well, that's going to take some work. So we're going to go grab that information. Not going to waste any time. We'll get right down to it. If you go to docs.larian.game to the main page, and you go to the Divinity engine, and then you go to Larian guides, and how do I create my first adventure? Right in the beginning here, they have a little section on the necessary scripting that you have to do. We're going to take this approach when loading no data. In other words, we have a standalone adventure here. We are not implementing something for Game Master. We are not doing an add-on to Origins or anything like that. We have our own little standalone adventure, and you can grab the file with this standalone template. If you download the zipped archive, you'll find that there's just a single text file in here. And if we open this up, we'll see that it looks like a story goal. This goal contains all the necessary scripting to either run in the editor with the dummy or to start up your adventure in the game client and be able to play it for real. So, in order to do this, we're going to have to find a location for it in our story. So we'll open up the story editor. And if you remember, we had been putting our goals under this start area. We have LDC journal here. We're going to add character creation right under here as well. Once we have this, we can just cut and paste that character creation script right into our goal. You'll see there's the init section here, so you want to grab everything under the init section up to the KB section right here. So we want to grab this. Let's move this out of the way. Throw this in here. Then we'll want to grab everything under the KB section. If I just go down to the end of the file, right up to the exit. So I'll just Control-C, stick that in here. And we'll save for now. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to make the edits that we need in order to get this up and running. We'll test it and make sure it works, and then we'll come back and we'll try to take a closer look at what's going on and understand what the different components are. So the first thing that we need to do is this DBGLO first level after character creation. We're going to want to change this from the sandbox to our start level. That's the name of the level that we created in our adventure, right? If you come back here, this is where our start point is, and our start level name is up here. You could also look at it in the level data if you can't remember what it is. So it's start level. And in addition to specifying the level, we also have to give it some extra character creation transition info, where once again we tell it which level to transition to after character creation is done. And then we have to give it a trigger, which will indicate where the player will spawn within the level. And there's a comment here that reminds us that this trigger needs to be global. So if we come back over here, we had our start point. We need to change this to be global. We'll save that. And once we save it, we will generate definitions again to make sure we can get a handle on it. I will start typing in start point. And if I hit Control spacebar, I'll be able to do completion of the start point. And I'll save that. And we will do a build and reload. Now the reason for making the start point global is because whenever you are trying to access objects outside of a level that you're in, it needs to be global. So now that this is built, let's start with a sanity test of making sure it runs within the editor. If we hit this and we go to our character, we have our nice guy in undies as usual. Everything seems okay there. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to save all, and then we're going to exit out of the editor. So now we brought up our game client in order to test it here. Once you go to story, there should be a drop down menu with the mods in your data directory, as well as any of the ones that you have maybe downloaded from the workshop. And we will choose our launch day crisis, and we'll begin. Now watch up here in the loading screen. This will tell you which level we're going to be going into. You see the sys character creation A? You remember that? That was in the character creation levels in the goals. We'll go back and look at that in a little bit. So now we're here. We can just choose a, I'm going to choose a lizard. Doesn't matter. Rogue. Start the game. I don't care about the tags right now. And we'll see we're in our mod now with an actual real character. So we can come over and we can talk to Sven, and everything looks as we expected. And we had leveled up our character, so we could go and do everything that we need to. So now we're starting to get somewhere. So let's go back to the editor and let's talk about some of the things that are happening within that script. Okay, so I know I said that we were going back to the editor in order to take a closer look at the script, but once again, in this video, we're going to have to go back in time a little bit. Once I had finished recording all the segments for the tutorial that I planned on doing, someone had messaged me and asked if I had seen an issue where when playing in the game, your character made from character creation would not enter into combat when it encountered hostile enemies. I had not tried that yet, so I did not know, and lo and behold, when I tested it, I saw the same problem as this other person. So I just want to demonstrate what the problem is with the character creation script as we received it. And actually it doesn't seem as much to be a problem with character creation script as it is perhaps with some of the data in the shared distribution that we have right now. Larian plans to fix this in the future, but for now we're going to have to work around an issue with the character creation dummies, it seems. So I'm just going to start a character here. And the screen is going to look a little different than the way we left it. We're just going to take this little companion over here and send her off to the side. And you'll see that inside the house I just put some zombies in there. So those zombies are hostile and they, oops, you go over there. Those zombies are hostile, so they should start attacking us as soon as we go into the house. Well, you'll see that we can just waltz right in here and they don't care. We can come over and attack them and they just stand there. We know zombies are dumb, but they shouldn't be this dumb. So we need to fix this. Okay, so I'm back in the editor now, and I'm going to open the story editor again. Now through a little trial and error and debugging, I narrowed it down to the fact that it looked like for some reason after character creation our dummies were losing their faction. If we go to the faction editor over here, you can see that, or the alignment editor, this determines how different entities will react to other entities. You can create alignments, then you can assign entities to certain alignments. You'll see that there is a hero alignment here, and there are relationships. So, for instance, an object with an evil alignment will be neutral with a target that has a neutral alignment, and so on and so forth. But for a hero should be hostile to a target that has an evil alignment. The zombies that I placed in the house do have an evil alignment. If you come down and you look at their alignment down here, it says evil NPC. That has an evil alignment. So they should react accordingly. Now, in order to fix this, what we're going to do is we're going to look for every instance where a character is made into a player in our script in the KB section. So I'm just going to do a find and then a db_is_player. And every time we see one of these right after it, we're going to create a line that says set faction. So I start typing this in, I hit Control plus spacebar again. You can see the options we get. We want to use the set faction function. As for the target is going to be the same as whatever was turned into a player. So in this case, I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'm going to put it right in here. And then for the faction, we're going to use the term hero for a player. We'll find the next one. Oops, let's go back. No, that's alright. We'll find the next one. And here we'll add it again. This time we're going to use the same variable that we used to create the player. It's this _dummy. Okay, now this is, be careful here, this is doing a query. This is not creating the player, this is checking to see if it is the player. So we don't want to add it here, we only want to add it in places where db_is_player is being assigned, not queried. So we want to go to the next one. This again, this is removing a player. We don't want to do it when there's a not in front of it. So here's another one. We don't want this one because that's removing a player. Here's another one that we want. And we're back at the top. We've wrapped around. So we're going to go ahead and build and reload. Now the interesting thing about this bug is it only happened in the game client. It doesn't happen in the editor, and we're assuming that that has something to do with when the character make player, or not the character make player, but maybe during, well, we'll go through these calls later, but maybe when the dummy is actually transformed into a real character. It's hard to say exactly why that tag's getting lost, but in any case, this will get us by for now, hopefully, until we find out what the real solution should be. But in any case, let's make sure it's not broken here. So this all seems to be fine. Okay, the fight starts. That's what we expect. It was never a problem in the editor before. It was always in the game client, so now we're going to go check the game client to make sure that works. Okay, so we're back at the game client. We're going to start a new single-player adventure. And we'll just take whatever first character comes up. And this is a good indication. The fact that this sight range indicator tooltip comes up means that we've probably sensed that there's danger nearby. But just to make sure, we're going to send our companion over there. And then we're going to come over here. Open the door. And now the fight starts, just like we expected it should. Okay, so I'm back in the editor here. And because I hadn't mentioned them before, and some of you may be way ahead of this tutorial series and already implementing combat and doing some other things, I do want to cover 2 quick shortcuts while you're testing. Now they're going to be extremely handy when you're doing the same thing over and over again. The first one is that if you want to just immediately teleport to an area, all you have to do is put your mouse at a location and hit the letter T, and you will immediately just move to wherever that is. When you have to traverse a bunch of terrain, that makes it very easy. So for instance, if we want to check combat now, I could just move right inside the house without even opening the door. I do this and the fight starts. Now the second useful shortcut is, as I mentioned before, is Control-Shift-K. If you just put your mouse over an enemy or any creature for that matter, and I hit Control-Shift-K, it will automatically kill them. I could do it over here too. And that's really handy. And be careful, because you can also do it to yourself. So you can kill anything in the game with Control-Shift-K. And with that, we should probably get back to the tutorial as it was meant to be. But I wanted to at least have everyone make those changes right away, so that we had a nice contiguous section of all the edits to the script in order to get basic character creation working. And maybe there are other bugs out there that we haven't found yet, I don't know, but at the time of making this tutorial, those changes that we did should get you on your way. So here we are back at our Launch Day Crisis project inside the editor. And I'm going to bring up the story script and we'll start looking at the character creation. So as I was pointing out when we were running the game, we had specified the character creation levels. Now this is not actually telling the game when you boot up which level to do character creation in. This is more used later on in the script in order to just catch when the event is happening. If you look under the project settings here, under general, you see how there's startup level and character creation level, so on and so forth. Well, if you don't specify under the anything under the character creation level, it will default to that sys character creation level that is in the shared templates. So I want to bring this up again. So we can actually look at this level, and we're going to want to do that. So I'm going to load a level, and if you want to find it, you can come over here to show inherited levels. So this is something that every empty project is getting. You get some of these, and under sys you'll see sys character creation. Now once we're under sys character creation, we can bring this up, and if you were to go in here, you will see some familiar sites. It's a little bit confusing. There are a ton of cameras here, and I don't pretend to understand how exactly each one of them comes into play. But this is where the scenery is created for character creation itself. Now, creating our own character creation screens beyond the scope of this tutorial, I haven't tried to do it yet, so you don't want me trying to instruct you on how to do that anyway. But I did want to bring this up because it at least solves the mystery of some of the things that might have been puzzling you about perhaps where dummy characters come from, And since we're going over character creation, we might as well address that here. So for instance, we have these 4 dummy characters that are created here, and then we have these generic origin entries that are put in the init section. These character creation dummies, as far as I can tell, these are created as placeholders for each character that each custom character that you can build at character creation time. And the origin placeholders are for potential origin and companion characters. And so I don't believe these placeholders are actually getting used at all in our version of character creation, but they're there for future use in case anyone wants to implement their own origins, and then you can assign your characters to them during character creation time if they're available. So I'm just going to put this over to the side for a second. Let's remember these creation dummies, and over here, if we filter on creatures and then do dummy, we'll find here, here they are. So those character creation dummies are hanging out in the level over here. Now, I'm trying to find, yeah, they're just hanging out in this blank area over here. There's no visual indices on them. The only thing that you have is a display name of dummy. These are global, which if you remember before, if you want to be able to get a handle on an object across levels and anywhere within the game, it has to be global, so it makes sense that the character creation dummies are global. So that's where these are. The other thing that we might want to look at are the origin characters, because there are some generic origins in here as well that were referenced. And if we double click on these, those are just hanging out over here. Similarly without any visual indices, and the interesting thing about the origin characters is their tags are different. The dummy characters did not have these companion tags. If I come over here and look at the tags, they're blank. The other thing we can look at over here is the GUID. If you've ever done some debugging and you've been trying to look at the character that you get when you run with the test dummy in the editor, you might be very familiar with this DA072, so on and so forth. You can see that over here too, right? The GUID matches. So in our script, the init section is just setting up some database entries to keep track of who all the character creation dummies are, and then who all the generic origin characters are. So with that, we'll move on to the KB section, and we'll just try to understand what some of these frames are doing. In the first part, it's going to run through the list of creation dummies, and it's going to add them to another database available called available dummies. This is going to become important later on for multiplayer if you had multiple people that were connecting to your game and they all want to create characters. What this is doing is it's setting up a couple of lists so that it can dole out the available dummies to each person that connects, and then their dummy gets transformed into a real character later. So that's all this is doing. It's setting up another list to keep track of which ones are free to use for any players. Now in this part here, this might actually be good to write a comment or something. You might want to write something like editor character creation. This game mode started. If game mode started, campaign for game mode, and then the 1. The 1 indicates whether it's the editor mode. So this is where it's running through some special case code for when you're testing in the editor and not doing real character creation. You'll see if we're running in the editor, it creates a DB variable called in-character creation, and it sets it to 0. So it knows that you're not really generating a character through the full character creation process. The other thing it's going to do is, if you're in the editor, it's going to run down through each character creation dummy. It's going to turn it from a player into an NPC, and then it's going to set it off stage. The set on stage dummy 0 basically means it renders it completely inert in the game. So it still technically exists, it just kind of disappears. There's no AI, it's not rendering anything. At any given point they can flip the switch and turn it back on if they want to. But for now, for every single character creation dummy, it's going to run through this list. It's going to turn them into NPCs instead of player characters and set them off stage. And then it's going to do the same thing for the generic origins. So if game mode started, it is editor mode, take all the generic origins. Remember, this frame is going to get executed for every single entry in this database variable. So since we created 4 character entries for DB generic origins, this frame is going to fire 4 times. It's going to fire for generic origin this one, generic origin this one, generic origin this one, and it's going to use each one of those in this character make NPC and set on stage command. Now, this is something they added just today actually, because with their first attempt of this script, it ended right there, and you couldn't run this script in the toolset because it just went through, took every creation dummy, set it off stage, and then started. So you ended up with a black screen and no character creator and couldn't do any testing. So they added this today. After they're done taking everything off of stage and turning them NPCs, it checks once again. Are we in the editor? Is first level after character creation defined? Is character creation transition info defined? If it is, okay, let's take that first dummy character, let's put him back on stage, turn him into a player. We're going to make that player active. We're going to set this DB is player database variable because that's used in a lot of other scripts. We saw that before when we were doing our journal. And then proc move party to start. This is going to teleport the character creation dummy, remember, which is in the sys character creation A level right now. This is going to move it from that level to the trigger that we specified in the character creation transition info, right? This trigger value is taken from the DB variable, which was defined up here. So that's what's going on in the editor in order to do character creation. So now we'll try to look at the more complicated process, which is when you're doing real character creation in the game. We begin here with a frame that says if character creation started. This is an API call, it's an event, so presumably this gets fired as soon as character creation starts. And this is this must happen for whoever is hosting the game. Even if you're doing a multiplayer game, this is going to fire before any other character joins. So you always have a host that's beginning the game, and what's going to happen is that host is going to get assigned the first character creation dummy right here. This call character add to character creation. This is another API call that is hard-coded in the engine. And I don't know exactly what all the parameters are. The first one is pretty obvious. You want to take basically a placeholder character value and place that in. And you remember when we looked at the character creation dummy, it didn't even have any visual set indices or anything. It doesn't need one because presumably this character add to character creation will do that in the engine. It will create all that during character creation process. So there's a respec value here. If you've played Origins and you've gotten to the part where there is a mirror where you can respec your characters, you'll notice that there is a script to do that, and the script calls this character add to character creation, and instead of a 0 it's a 2. We don't have exact information on what all these values are, but if you do some digging in Origins and you find the homestead where the respec can occur, it calls this and it uses a 2 instead of a 0. The success is something that's passed back from character creation, and so we take that value and we put it in this db in character creation value. And remember, anytime you update a db variable, it also creates an event with that same name. So the next frame here, it says if db in character creation. So once the host joins and adds, goes into character creation and the dummy variable gets added, this is going to fire. It's going to say if db in character creation 1 and db character creation dummy. So this is only going to be true at this point for the first one. Then it's going to set it on stage. It's going to teleport the dummy to some origin destination, which I forgot to look at what that is. That might be the location in character creation where it is being manipulated. And then it's made into a player. So you remember before they were all turned into NPCs to start with. Well, now it's being turned back into a player now that someone's going to be using it. Now they do the same thing here in case it was a generic Origins character that is being used instead of a dummy. Now, if you're in character creation setup, it calls this iterate users command, which basically takes anyone. It iterates through all the users that are connected. And what this is going to do is anyone who's connected, it's going to dole out the character creation dummies for all the users who are connected. So this is starting to get into the multiplayer aspects. And it's doing similar stuff where it will assign the dummy for the user, it will make it into a player, it will assign it to the user, make it active, and turn the db is player on. Now down here you can see if character creation finished and you're in character creation level and the current level has been set and there's such a thing as character creation levels, it's getting a handle on all these values. And now it's checking to see if there was a first level after creation. It's checking the transition info, and if the character for which character creation finished is a player, then it sets this do not face and it calls proc move party to start. So this is where you remember where we gave it some information up here about our first level after creation and the transition info. This is basically after character creation is done. It's using that information we gave it to take the character and move the character to the start position. And to make a long story short, a lot of this is just cleanup, or it's defining the procedures that were already used up above. Don't want to drag this on too long, and some of it's going to get into some really gray areas that I don't fully understand, but hopefully that was somewhat helpful just to give you a little bit of an idea as to how all the magic is happening, and perhaps if you have to go and make some modifications yourself, you'll have some context to do so. So thankfully we didn't have to come up with all that. Larian did the hard work of giving us a nice script that packages all of the most important components that we need for us. And now we're going to go back to our mod, and we'll look at one other thing we can do. So in addition to being able to create characters from the game, we might want to add a character to the party as a companion or a henchman type, and we can do that right from here. So let's do this. Let's bring up our root templates, and we're going to add a second character that will automatically join as soon as we start up the game. We'll go to the creatures here, and we can really choose anything. So just for the sake of it, let's choose an elf, and we'll choose a just an elf in female clothing here. And in order to make the changes we want, we're going to create a new root template from it. So I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to say create new from selected. We're going to leave everything basically the same. We're just going to change the name here, and we're going to say elf female test player. You'll see why in a moment. Now, one of the other handy things over in the root templates is if you come over here and click the wrench, it will only show the root templates for your mod, so it's easy to find the ones that you've created. We're going to click on this, and we're going to modify some things. And since she's a sidekick, we'll call her Robin. Alright, under equipment class, we're going to change this to elf female. I believe this is what helps define what the various armor types are going to look like when we put real equipment on our player. If we left that as none, you would notice that when we try to put armor on our player, it just actually makes the visual indices disappear. So I've found in my testing that I have to put that to whatever I want the visual armor to look like. And under name, we already have elf female test player. And we're going to come down, and we can assign equipment here. Under equipment, we're going to use down below, no, up here, there are classes. Let's say we're going to make her a rogue. So we're going to say class rogue elves, and that will give default equipment to her. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make her level 3. So we're going to put that there. And under player, this is where we have to click true. And when we do this, she will automatically be added to the party when we start the game. Now under skills, oops, we don't want skills. So one of the things that we can do here is we can also define a skill set. This is where things can get a little complicated depending upon how precise you want to get. Let's bring up the stats editor for a second. And under stats, we have character stats. Under skill data, we have skill sets. And if we bring this up, we'll notice there are various sets that are defined here, and if we look at what class rogue is going to have, it will have throwing knife, multi-strike, vault, and shout adrenaline. So we're just going to pick that, class rogue. And if we wanted to, we could add some additional skills on top of that if we needed to, like if we wanted to filter by the skill school, we could do rogue. And we could get a list of the different skills here. We could do, we could give her cloak and dagger if we want on top of that. Now under stats, this is probably one of the harder things to do and to balance and to get right, for me anyway, because I don't fully understand all the weighting values that are used. So if you were to open up the stats, you'd get a list here, When I was going through this earlier, I really did not see a good template to use in order to create a good companion. There really aren't any rogue type stats that are just available for you right out of the gate. So we're going to have to create our own. However, there is a good start already. If we bring up the character stats, and if we type rogue here, you can see that there are some rogue stats that are defined. There just isn't anything without the underbar that is using them. These underbar ones, I believe, are intended to be inherited only. So if you look at rogue up here, above the highlighted bar, it has some stat values that are all weighted numbers. These aren't absolute numbers. It's not necessarily that she's going to start with 3 strength and 7 finesse. This is more numbering system out of 10, weighting them in terms of their scale with level, and so on and so forth. Rogue lore actually refers to the scoundrel skills, and there's sneaking and thievery. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the rogue and we're going to create a derived object in our own module. If we go down here to stats and to character, looks like you have to create the table before it will take. So the first time we did that, it just created our local mod, and now this time it actually put the entry in there. So it's all blank right now. You can see that it says rogue override using rogue. We're going to change this name to be something like rogue player test, or rogue test player. And we're going to borrow from rogue, and we're going to do something like, we're going to change the weighting a little bit, and we're going to make the rogue lore something like 10, and maybe dual wielding also a 10. And we'll see what happens with that. You save it, and then you can do a reload stats. We will reload our level and story. Actually, we don't have to do that yet. We haven't even placed our character yet. So that was just doing the root template. Now we'll actually place the character in the level. And if we click, we'll just double check a few things. Robin, elf, female. Is player. And we want to set the stats. And now if we go over here to rogue, we should be able to see our rogue test player in here. And we'll save this. And we'll reload our level and story. And if we hit play, you can see equipment being transferred over to her. That's because we gave her that equipment setting, so that's what that was doing. We see her name's Robin. She's level 3, like we said when we gave her the override. If we bring her up here, we can see the skills from the skill sets, plus the cloak and dagger that we gave her specifically. And The hard part about figuring stats is it's not the type of thing where you can just say, I want her to be level 3 and I want her to level up just like characters do. If you really wanted to do that, you would just have to make her a player, start her at level 0, and then you could level her up manually with scripting like we did, and then go and invest the points. When you use these stats, it's using levels plus weighted values to do some calculations as to what it thinks it should be at this point. But we're just creating her for testing at this point. So when we made her level 3, you can see that her scoundrel abilities are 3 and her dual wielding is 3. That's a little overpowered based upon, you know, the actual rules. But you could play with those and you could figure out exactly what you wanted. We also, in our stats, could have given her some talents if we wanted to. But it at least gives you a feeling for the types of things you can play with if you just wanted to go ahead and create an NPC companion for the player right when they start up. So if you want to, this can be useful because if you're going to make a mod and you're trying to balance combat, maybe you want to create several NPCs right out of the gate with certain types of stats so you can figure out how they all play together. As you can see, she's like any other PC or any other player character right now. She can go over, she can talk to Swin. She gets the hatchet. And we have a nice couple right now. Now we also want to make sure that this works as designed in game, so we're going to run it in the game client. And as our game starts up, we have our character with us. We can put them together, and here we are. Great team. We will accomplish great things together. We're both level 3. You'll notice that she's a little better than we are, but if we wanted to, we could go over and we could play with the stats so that she was more comparable to our level. But for our purposes here, we at least have shown how to get the different components reasonably working, and from here you can go and tailor things however they fit for your module. So I hope that going over some of this character creation stuff was helpful. I think no matter what, it will be a very good and necessary step as we move forward with this launch day crisis tutorial, because the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create some NPCs inside the house and start getting into the issue of encounters and combat. And we wanted to have at least some flexibility with character creation so that we can have some abilities and try balancing things out a little bit. So thanks for watching. Hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to look me up on Discord or on the forums, and we'll try to help you out.